Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name is Alex, and today I've got more of a commentary than anything else. My latest gripe with AI is that I think we're starting to treat AI a lot like we do our influencers. In other words, we seem to believe everything AI has to say is actually true and is the way to success. I think that's dangerous overall because this is why we probably have a measles pandemic today, right? Like because AI told RFK that vaccines aren't important. And so here we are. And it's not just in medical or in tech, this is like everywhere. And here's an example, right? I remember watching something on either TikTok or Instagram a couple of months ago, and there's this kid. He's probably fresh out of high school and he's talking about longevity. He's basically saying he cracked the code on how to live a long life. He was shitting on vegans at the time, and I'm vegan, so of course I'm like, what the hell? But here's the reality of that, right? You look at a 20 something who's a longevity influencer and you say like how did you crack the code? You are barely out of high school. Like if I want advice or longevity advice from somebody, I'm clearly going to go to the guy who's 90 or 100 and ask him how he got to that age. I'm not going to look at somebody who just broke out of high school and is sitting around crapping all over the vegan lifestyle and says, well, no, obviously, if you eat meat, you're going to live this forever life. So it's the same thing with AI. We seem to be at this point where what AI says is more believable than an actual resource who understands the full problem. And the example that I want to give here is a consulting engagement that I was on not that long ago. The person that I was involved with is not a technical person, and they clearly used an AI for a lot of the decision making that went into this project. So we had an issue where the database would go down at certain times of the day, and so there was like error logs and errors. Obviously, the things that bubbled up because the database was down. So this person threw all this stuff at his AI agent and asked the agent to basically find the problem and tell him how to solve it. And of course, AI did that. AI is here to help us. It's here to agree with us overall, and it's not going to argue. It's just going to try and solve our problem. And so what it did is it basically found a very innocent query. It was the first query in the chain of queries that were running on some specific page. And the AI basically fixated on that query and said, hey, you get rid of this one query and everything will be great. So this guy comes back to me and basically, dumps out his chat pretending that he wrote it, but, you could tell because it's got the long hyphens and it's got things like why this matters in the content. And so I'm reading this and it's like pointing at this very simple query that updates a view count. And basically, the entire premise of this essay, which is like 6 or 7 paragraphs long, boils down to the fact that if you get rid of this one query, everything will work after that perfectly and without flaw. Now, I'm the guy who wrote the system. I looked at this, I chuckled, I called the guy back, and I said, like, there's no way that removing this query will solve this problem. Like, this is not the problem. This is the first thing in a very long line of things that just happened to have caused the error and stopped there. Like, you're not seeing the rest of the errors because this thing caught it. And this is the first thing to catch it, but it isn't the thing that is the problem. But I couldn't convince him. I spent 3 days struggling with this because essentially I'm being paid to remove this query out of this project, which I know is not the problem, but at the same time, it's not my call, right? I am just working for somebody else and I'm doing what they want me to do ultimately. So I removed the query. And of course, when the same thing happened again, the next thing in line became the problem. And so this is the thing that I'm starting to see more and more in the workforce and basically out and about. People are making decisions by asking their chat agent to help them make these decisions. We're no longer using our critical thinking skills around how things should be done and why they should be done. And I think this is largely wrong. Now, I am not anti AI. I love using AI. I've actually integrated it into a bunch of my workflows, and I do a lot of work with AI these days. I couldn't achieve half the things that I shipped this year or half the things that I've done this year without the use of Claude or Cursor. But my point being is that we have to maintain some level of critical thinking and that suspicion that basically says, well, I don't buy it. Like, explain why this would be the solution, and I don't think we do that enough. Overall, before I get too carried away with this, I will say that from a development perspective, purely, and I think this is the same in other industries as well, and other roles and positions throughout the workforce. I think if you're totally anti-AI because you don't like its water usage, you don't like the data centers, you don't like what it's done to the memory, like you think it's making everybody into an idiot, and we shouldn't use it at all, I think you're in trouble. And I think also if you're the guy who can't any longer answer a simple email with a sentence or two. Instead, you have to throw the email into your AI chatbot, get like some essay back out and throw that back at people. I think you're in trouble as well. I think we have to find a balance between where AI makes sense to use and where it's just overkill. And again, talking purely from a development perspective, I think if you're a software developer, here's where you are today. Should you learn to code? Yes, you should understand architecture, you should understand the language, and you should understand how things are tied together in whatever project you're working on. Will you or are you writing brand new code in 2026 or 2027 and beyond? Probably not. You might be fixing some minor things here and there. But for the most part, your role is more of like the CTO type role or the lead or the manager. And you need to explain the technical requirements down to your agent and have that agent do the work and make sure it's done it correctly. I've heard lots of people talk about how AI, is a junior developer, and it's very true. Like its first thing is let's write code. Let's just write some code. And it doesn't get it right. It doesn't have the full picture, so it has to augment that full picture with things that it just makes up along the way. At the other end of the spectrum, I think if you're the kind of developer that doesn't want to use AI, I think you'll have a very difficult time finding work in the near future. So I think I've kind of described it already, and I'll stop here. I think if you're using too much AI and relying it for everything, I think it's leading you astray. I think you need to get back to understanding your problems yourself and applying critical thinking skills to how to solve them. And I think if you're at the other end of the spectrum where you don't want to use AI because it scares you or because it's this huge impact on everything else, water, land, whatever. I think you are not giving it enough of a chance. I think we need to be in that middle where we use AI for different things. We just not necessarily rely on it 100% of the time for everything. And my point here is that I think we're seeing this like at the corporate level now, more and more from CEOs and from other leaders in organizations. In other words, they're looking at this and they're throwing prompts and specific documents and things like that at their chat agent. That chat agent spits out these numbers that say, oh, like you don't need the developers anymore. Like cut that group or get rid of this group. Like you could get rid of all these other people. You'll save yourself all this money, like all this great stuff. But the reality is you've already biased the agent into doing this for you because the agent is going to agree with you. It has a context and a memory of some of the things that it knows about you. And if one of your things happens to be cost cutting and, efficiency and more productivity, of course, it's going to lead in with those things in whatever solutions it presents to you. And so I think it's important for us to make sure that, again, we use critical thinking skills and identify the problems that AI can help us with versus the ones we really have to solve ourselves. And I think overall, from a corporate perspective, from a personal perspective, whether you're an influencer or an AI agent, you're entertainment for the most part. You are not necessarily gospel in terms of the truth and the facts and exactly how it is. And we seem to be missing that point. And so I wanted to bring that point to your attention. And basically, that's the video. This is what I wanted to say today. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Please comment on how you feel about all of this. Am I crazy? Am I over exaggerating? Has anybody else experienced something like this where you're now getting emails from coworkers that look like they're, written by AI? And so welcome to the AI revolution. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.